In the year 101 after Christ, the most powerful army in history crossed the Danube River with the absolute certainty that no one in the world could stop them. Rome had conquered Carthage, had humiliated Greece, had buried Egypt. Its legionaries were war machines, forged on 3 continents. And yet, on the other side of the river, something awaited them that no Roman general had ever seen before. A tribe that forced Rome to redesign its armor in the middle of a war. A king who studied Rome for decades to destroy it with its own techniques. And a death that left paralyzed the most experienced Roman soldiers in the world. In the autumn of the year 101 after Christ, the first Roman legionaries who crossed the combat line returned with something that no Roman military doctor had seen before. They were not the usual spear or sword wounds. They were cuts made at a descending angle. Clean, precisi, deep, that pierced the Roman shield and continued toward the arm that held it. The Dacian falx did not strike. It hooked. Its curved geometry allowed it to overcome from above the flat surface of the scutum, the rectangular Roman shield. The physics was simple, the consequences disastrous. The most feared weapon in history was not new. It was only new to Rome. The Roman scutum was considered invulnerable, not in a figurative sense. In a technical sense, it was built with 3 layers of laminated wood, covered with leather and reinforced in the center with an iron boss. It weighed between 5 and 10 kilograms. It could withstand spears, swords, arrows, rocks thrown from walls. For 5 centuries, the Roman army had built its combat strategy around one certainty. The shield holds. The Dacian falx invalidated that certainty. In a matter of weeks, the veteran legionaries, men who had fought in Britannia, in Africa, in the East, reported something that no Roman military report had recorded before: collective panic in the Sime, first line of combat. The response of Rome was extraordinary and revealed exactly how much damage the falx had caused. In the course of the same campaign, the Roman military engineers developed and mass-distributed a new armor component that had never existed before. In the Roman army, the manica, an articulated protection of iron and leather that covered the right arm, the arm that held the sword from the wrist to the shoulder, made with overlapping segments that allowed full movement of the arm. The manica was sophisticated, expensive, and completely unprecedented. In 500 years of military history, no enemy had forced Rome to redesign its armor during the development of an active war. Trion's column, the commemorative monument erected in Rome after the Dacian Wars, documents this fact with archaeological precision. In its scenes carved in stone, one can observe exactly the historical moment when the manica was adopted. The legionaries in the reliefs prior to the Dacian battles do not have it. The legionaries in the reliefs of the Dacian campaign do, not in all soldiers, only in those of the first line, only in those who face the falx directly. The column is, among other things, a forensic record of how an unknown weapon forced the most perfected army of ancient history to rewrite its own combat survival protocols. There is a final fact that the Roman military manuals of the time record without apparent emphasis, but which modern historians point out as statistically extraordinary. During the 5 most important military campaigns of Rome before the Dacian Wars, including the conquest of Britannia, the wars against the Parthians, and the campaigns of the Rhine, the Roman army made no structural modification to its standard armor. 5 campaigns, 5 different enemies, no change. The Dacian falx achieved in weeks what no army in 5 centuries had achieved, forcing Rome to admit, for the first time in its history, that its standard combat equipment was insufficient. In the year 102 after Christ, Rome won the First Dacian War. The terms of the treaty were designed to be humiliating. Decebalus had to deliver his weapons, demolish his fortresses, expel the Roman deserters from his territory, and, the most significant point, Except Roman military engineers sent by Trajan to supervise the fulfillment of the agreement. Rome called this a victory. Modern historians call it something else. Decebalus signed the treaty in public, before the Roman legates with the protocolar formality that Rome demanded. No record of the time describes resistance, negotiation, or alternative conditions. Only acceptance. What Rome did not record was what Decebalus did next. The Roman military engineers, sent as treaty supervisors, were the best technicians of the ancient world. They knew the principles of sloped wall construction, the calculation of angles to deflect projectiles, the fundamentals of hydraulic engineering for supply systems in mountain fortresses, and the mathematics of building observation towers with optimized lines of sight. Decebalus assigned them translators, provided them with lodging, allowed them to work with total freedom within his territories, and made them observe without knowing it every Dacian fortress that still existed, including those that the treaty did not require to be modified. The access was complete. The era was Roman. Between the years 102 and 105 after Christ, the period of peace imposed by the treaty, the archaeological records of Sarmize Gatusa Regia, the Dacian capital, show unprecedented constructive activity, new walls, additional towers, access systems reformed with engineering principles unknown in Dacian architecture prior to the treaty, deep water storage systems, Roman hydraulic technology integrated into the natural rock of the mountain, grain deposits, capable of sustaining a garrison in prolonged siege. Decebalus did not use the 3 years of peace to surrender. He used them to build the improved version of his fortress, financed by the gold that Rome had not found, designed with the engineering that Rome had taught him. In the year 105 after Christ, Decebalus attacked again. It was not an impulsive reaction. It was the result of 3 years of methodical preparation. His initial objectives were deliberately provocative. The Roman provinces of Moesia and Pannonia, territories that Rome considered inviolable, part of the administrative core of the empire on the Danube. The attack occurred while Trajan was in Rome, busy with administrative matters of the Senate. The message was clear. Although it was not spoken aloud, Decebalus had not accepted the treaty. He had used it and now attacked with fortresses built with Roman engineering, with tactics refined during 3 years of observation, with an army reorganized during the period of peace that Rome had called victory. Trajan returned to Dacia in the year 105 after Christ with the largest army that Rome had ever sent to a single campaign, approximately 150,000 soldiers, including specialized engineers, auxiliary cavalry units from 12 different provinces, and the most important architect of the empire, Apollodorus of Damascus, to build the permanent bridge over the Danube that Rome needed for a definitive occupation. The Roman response to the second Dacian attack was not proportional to the provocation. It was existential. Rome was not coming to win another war. It was coming to end the possibility that the war existed, and Decebalus, from his fortress improved with Roman engineering, expected exactly that. In the summer of the year 106 after Christ, the Roman army completed the siege of Sarmize Gatusa Regia. The strategy was methodical and without improvisation. Cut the external aqueducts that supplied the upper city. Block the mountain roads with permanent garrisons. Establish Roman camps at the 4 cardinal points of the fortress and wait. Rome did not need to assault the walls. It only needed time. Even the fortress improved with Roman engineering, with its underground cisterns, its grain deposits, its renewed access systems, had a calculable limit of resistance. Decebalus knew it. The Roman engineers who had supervised its construction 3 years earlier also knew it. The siege was technically an equation with a known solution. What Rome did not anticipate was the decision that Decebalus made before the siege equation reached its mathematical conclusion. When it became clear that the fortress could not resist indefinitely, he summoned the Dacian nobles, who remained inside the city, not to discuss a negotiated surrender, not to organize a last attempt to break the siege. He summoned them to deliver instructions on what should be destroyed, what should be hidden, and what should be preserved from the Dacian capital for the generations that would come after. The meeting lasted several hours. According to Roman sources, which reconstructed it from later testimonies, at the end of it, Decebalus left alone toward the east, toward the mountains that he knew better than any Roman. The Roman cavalry detachment that followed Decebalus through the eastern mountains was one of the best in the empire, the Mosian auxiliary cavalry, veterans trained specifically in pursuit and capture in mountainous terrain. Its commander was Tiberius Claudius Maximus, a decurion whose later career was recorded on his funerary stele, one of the few primary sources that directly document the events of the final days of Decebalus. The trail was not difficult to follow. Decebalus moved with a small group, and movements in the mountain leave evidence for experienced trackers. What the Roman cavalry did not know while reducing the distance to their target was that Decebalus had also seen them and that he had already made his decision. Tiberius Claudius Maximus found Decebalus in a mountain clearing. The primary source, the funerary stele of Maximus himself, discovered in the 20th century in Greece, describes the moment with the economy of language of a military report. The decurion reached the Dacian king, and he took his own life before he could be captured. What the stele does not describe, but later historical records that consolidated multiple testimonies do, is what happened in the seconds between the moment when Decebalus saw the Roman cavalry approaching and the moment when he acted. He did not try to negotiate. He did not raise his hand in a sign of surrender. He did not ask for conditions. He drew his own curved sword with the same calm with which he had signed the peace treaty 4 years earlier and applied it to his neck. A Roman general who participated in the Dacian campaign wrote years later that at the moment of Decebalus's death, the Roman soldiers who were about to capture him stopped, not by order, not by protocol. They stopped because they could not move. They were veterans of 3 wars, men who had seen companions die in Britannia, on the Rhine, in the deserts of Arabia, and yet, in that mountain clearing, in front of a man who chose to die rather than be exhibited. Something in them recognized a category of courage for which the Roman military vocabulary had no name. Rome took Decebalus's head to the Capitol. It exhibited it on the steps of the Capitol as proof of victory. Trajan celebrated his triumph with 123 days of festivals and never obtained the victory he had gone to seek.